Well, hello, everybody. This is my Radical Baby Metal number 2, which is an extension of the longer Radical Metal number 1, because I'm going to focus on some political stuff. Remember, Radical Baby Metals are supposed to be a short and sweet extension of what we talk about in the other podcasts. So today, I thought I'd do a short and sweet snippet to extend from Radical Metal 1, where we focused a lot on politics. And specifically, the topic today is, who is a greater threat to democracy, Republicans or Democrats? So before I start, maybe I should do a quick background on me. I started Radical Metal because I love heavy metal music, but I also kind of latched on to a term that I first heard from my brother, Radical Middle, because it tries to be more nuanced. It tries to understand the value that both parties bring and also be critical of both parties. And maybe one day, maybe make a third party, I don't know. But maybe a third party that's based off reason and not getting votes. I don't know. That sounds probably like not too effective in winning elections, but hey, I'm trying to spread the gospel in that sense. In regards to me, you might notice I'm wearing a math hat. That's from Andrew Yang's campaign for presidency. I liked Andrew Yang. I like that he focused on technology, so I got this hat. Universal basic income, not so much maybe. I think there's a lot of problems with that, but I liked him. He lost, so take of that what you will. Right beside me, I have a book that I enjoyed, Conservative Sensibility, George F. Will. That's another piece of me. I agree with George Will on almost everything. I even got that book for all my family, and nobody read it. I got to page 500, and then probably I had to put it down because I got a little bored, and plus was like, I get it, George. I was a Marine, so take from that what you will, but I fiercely love this country, I think is my point. And I think that America, with all of its problems, and some of them existential, and a lot of them quite severe problems that we have, it is our best shot at the best way of living, I think, that the earth has seen. So I fiercely love America. I'm fiercely proud to be American and part of a democracy like this. So today, who is a greater threat to democracy? Is it the Democrats? Or is it the Republicans? Well, first, let's talk about the Democrats. Democrats, a lot of frustration I have or have been hearing. The big one for me is free speech. I think it's very disconcerting that on our universities, a lot of free speech is quelled if you don't like what their opinion is. I think that is so wrong. One part of Radical Middle that I frequently talk about is dignity in the discourse and protecting the discourse, and there has to be a platform where anybody can come in and say their spiel and debate it, even if it's reprehensible to you. I think everybody uses the extreme case. Well, what if Nazis want to talk about Nazism? Well, yeah, let them, because if you don't let them practice their freedom of speech, then you drive them into the darkness, and I think you also lay the groundwork for maybe more severe ways for them getting their point across. And at the end of the day, is it that hard to debate a Nazi? I don't think it's that hard to debate a Nazi. Anyway, so free speech in those areas, and then, Republicans, just real quick, are a little bit hypocritical. Said they share the same criticisms I do about the freedom of speech when it comes to the Democrats, yet they're trying to ban the word gay in Florida. So, I don't know. Take from that what you will. So free speech, this pandemic has really raised a lot of issues, mandated wearing masks, mandated vaccines, things like that. Do we live in a medical state? All that. For me, I've kind of gone back and forth with the vaccine because at first I thought it was a a risk. Maybe it was risky to take it, but I thought it was a patriotic sacrifice so that I would not burden the healthcare system if I got sick, and I would not get anyone else sick. Now that we kind of know that vaccines don't necessarily mean you won't get COVID, I think the spreading COVID piece is a little bit moot. It may mitigate and mitigate the spread of COVID a little bit, but it's a little unclear. And so I'm a little more open to folks that don't want to take the vaccine, because my biggest threat was my daughter getting it, and she can get it whether you're vaxxed or not. That kind of diminishes that point for me, and so I've kind of flipped a little bit on that one. And then mask wearing, I don't know. I think at the end of the day, or at least today, that's all kind of rolled back. I think everybody's sick of the pandemic and willing to risk it. So it may be a moot point at this point, but I know that folks have thought that is a threat to democracy. Biden, people, if you aren't a Democrat, there's a good chance you may hate Biden. I wonder why he's there. Well, he is old. Maybe he's got a toe in the water of dementia. All that, I think, is probably reasonable. So should he be president? I don't know. Is there enough redeeming qualities for him to be there? I don't know. That's a hard one. Ukraine, could he have been tougher? I don't know. It's hard for me to say on that stuff. I don't know Biden. I don't interact with him, so it's tough. But I get it. I get it that he slurs his words, and he calls people by the wrong titles, and it's disconcerting. And understand that, by electing a Democrat that may be entering dementia is possibly a threat to democracy. So I get it. So Republicans, well, spoiler alert, I'm going to say that the Republicans are the greater threat to democracy right now. And why am I saying that? And look, this is just my opinion. It doesn't hurt anybody. I'm just saying how I've come to these conclusions, and they may change. But why do I think the Republicans are the biggest threat to democracy? Well, I believe that Trump, if he was able to do it, would have subverted the election results of the last election where he lost to Biden. I think there was a lack of overwhelming and compelling evidence, yet he still decided to perpetuate what I say is a lie about the election being stolen, and that really caused a lot of fires. And being a demagogue, which I think he is, his followers followed that lie as it was, thinking it was truth, and caused all kinds of problems that I think is a serious threat to democracy. Talk about January 6th what you will. Were they tourists? Were they peaceful protests? I don't think they were. I think there's enough evidence. Is that Trump's fault? I think yes. I think partly is, yes. And maybe it's the folks that participated in that event. I don't know. But I do think that the very idea to spread and perpetuate a lie that the election was stolen despite the evidence is very critical and severe threat to democracy. And then also to ask your vice president to not count the votes, I think, is another indication that it's a severe threat. And then to ask for the 11,781 votes in Georgia is very compelling to me, that he would have subverted democracy to stay in power. And to me, that is a very serious threat to democracy, and far outweighs, in my opinion, to anything that Democrats are seen or perceived to do. So that's where I come from. And that not only that, you always say, well, hey, some folks will say Trump is fringe now, and so are all of his followers. It's more of a fringe part of the Republican Party. I don't think that's true. I am seeing him still the leader of the party, and that you have to kiss the ring in order to get reelected in most cases. I do see indications that some folks are sidestepping him a little bit. I think DeSantis is sidestepping him a little bit in Florida by not saying he's not going to run. And so I think there's signs that we're stepping away from him. But I don't know. I think a cult of personality, he's got a huge following. You got folks like Marjorie Taylor Greens and Matt Gaetz and folks like that that continue to perpetuate what I would say is ridiculous because it feeds into this untruthful monster culture. That's my opinion. That's how I think of it. And so, therefore, I conclude, and unless you can convince me otherwise, and I'm open to any thoughts on this, that the Republicans are the biggest threat to democracy when it comes to comparing Democrats and Republicans. Now, one last thought. You may say, well, maybe democracy is not what we want. Maybe we just want a strong man, strong woman in power that is a benevolent dictator. Because they'll get things done, darn it. Well, I think I've thought that way before. But I don't think that way anymore. I think inevitably power corrupts. I think it's just human nature. We got to know what our strengths and limitations are, and we're not perfect by any stretch. And so I don't think there's a character out there, to include mine or anybody else's, that may be able to resist the buzz you get from the power of being a leader of the free world. So benevolent dictator, I think, is not something that we want. Benevolent autocrat is not something that I think is good for this country. This country was founded by the people for the people. And while that's flawed, I think we need to do our best to bolster that. It's a great idea and needs to be cherished and nurtured. So that's my opinion. I think Republicans are the greatest threat. Now, final thought. The great equalizer. You may say, hey, all politicians are corrupt. Well, maybe, yeah. I think you're probably right, or a lot of them are. What's the root of all that evil? I would say money. This is related back to my Bitcoin radical baby metal, but Bitcoin might be the great equalizer. Now, I don't think it's going to solve all the world's problems, but the fact that Bitcoin is not using a centralized bank, that the validation is from the network and not from a government, I think is a wonderful thing and may mitigate a lot of these other items. So if you're curious about that and you're curious what I'm talking about, do some research and look into it yourself. I think you might be excited maybe about what you find. And with that, we'll end Radical Baby Metal number 2. Amen.